There's a sign-in sheet going around. I think everybody's
You're on it.
got their
They're all
name
on
on
it.
it.
Yep.
You've been putting the names on.
They're all on there.
The first item on our agenda for our Water Wastewater Commissioners meeting is citizens' comments. If there was someone here that would like to speak regarding a topic that is not on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. Are there any citizens' comments for water or wastewater?
Yes. Bill Lindsay. I'm sure I have no conflict of interest in this particular subject because I don't own a laundromat anymore. However, we do need economic development. Whatever possibilities that comes before the town. In some cases, a commercial rate for water and sewer would really be advantageous. I know it's never been done. I will say I'm probably at this point the last of the laundromats in Chester. Previous owner had a laundromat, had the same problem. The regular rates are too stiff, even though there's a large volume. If you buy gasoline or you buy other items that you need for your business, if you do a volume business, you generally get a better rate. So my point is something to think about for the future for economic development. Please come up with some type of a commercial rate. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
We don't, it's a set rate for everyone.
It's a set rate. You get a base rate, so it's per 1,000 gallons of usage. And then there is a base rate. That base rate, 1 unit is equivalent to 17,000 gallons of usage, is how that's calculated. There are definitely a lot of different ways to do water sewer billing, which is something we can definitely look at some point, sure. Yeah, ours is not the only way to do it. It's done many different ways across the state.
I think we only have, what, one big user, that would be Drews?
We have a couple big users. Newsbank, Drews, the schools are big users.
Yeah.
We have, Ed Car Wash is a big user. Yeah, we have several. Yeah.
And that would be something in our capacity as the water and the sewer commissioners to look at for the
Correct.
rates and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it that hard to get a comparison sheet from what other towns do?
So, Amy and I went to that billing program, that asset management program, no, not Amy and I, Sil and I, last year. And so I do have notes and things. It's a complete conversion of your entire billing, including our program. So it's not just you just change your rates. It's a big conversion. So we would definitely want to put a lot into the research of how it could be done.
Oh, right. Yeah, but it's good to read to see what other people do.
Absolutely.
I'm a big fan of plagiarization now since I got out of school.
Absolutely.
Someone's
And every
already done it.
town's a little bit different, so absolutely. Something we can look at.
Has it actually started?
They're not.
No. All right, thank you. Any other citizens' comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to setting our water rates. Julie, can you take us through this?
I can. So if you recall, I presented this back in August. It had been many years since we've raised rates. So we're at this point playing catch up, and the thing that the board had agreed to doing was incremental increases from starting in August of '23, going through the end of '24. So this is now November. The November billing will be going out this month. So you will be setting the water base rate at $67, which is a $3 increase per unit, and the usage rate at $2, which is a 50-cent increase.
So when we go to set this rate, we're just going to set the November? We're not going to set the other months even though
No,
it's going to be
because
going
what
up?
you wanted to do is we're monitoring this to see where these increases leave us in comparison to expense, so that we're not raising more than we need to.
So some of these might not happen. This is
Correct.
just projected at the
Correct.
time being, for the time
Correct.
being?
We decided it would be a good idea to just review these each quarter
Yep.
and just see where we're at.
Yeah. You know, I brought along a sewer and water bill of my own, and it was for a quarter. I think it was for 96 days or something, and it was probably about 40 or 50 gallons a day per person. I think it was about 150 gallons a day. And my bill was $255, so- and when I did a little bit of the math, looked like it was going to go up about $20 or $25 for a bill at $255. I mean, everybody's bill is going to be different, but it gives you a little bit of an idea on how
Yeah.
it might work.
Yeah.
I never paid attention to it. I used to just pay it and not
We
look at the
are,
numbers.
I will tell you that our water and sewer rates are some of the lower in the state. We are definitely not overbilling for water and wastewater. They're two very expensive departments to run. So,
And there is the sewer upgrade that's going to be coming in
this
the
is
future.
correct,
Relatively soon, which is going to be pretty expensive.
correct. But, you know, they're just expensive departments with the chemicals as well, with the pumps that are required. I mean, polymer, Jeff just told me, the department had meeting on Tuesday, I think he said doubled in price. So prices for chemicals are expensive to run the wastewater department.
Any other questions or comments regarding our water rate, the setting of it for the new numbers? So we need a motion on that?
Yes, please.
So we're doing both water and sewer at this time?
Just the water?
Water, they're two separate agenda items.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion that we increase the proposed rate for water from $64 to $67 per unit, and the usage rate from $1.50 to $2.
All right, I'll second that.
Leaves the motion, and Peter's the second. Any further discussion on it? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It's just the three of us. I forgot to mention, one of our select board members is in New York City and unavailable, and another one is ill. So we better vote unanimously tonight, otherwise it doesn't happen. The next item is the sewer rate, basically the same thing, just the numbers are going up a little bit.
Correct. Well, a little bit. So this time, we are taking a break on the base rate. The base rate for sewer will not increase. Usage will go from 450 to 475. And the reason is sewer is not as behind as water in its
Yeah,
rates.
they
Yeah.
have quite a cash balance.
Yes. Yeah.
Entertain a motion to keep the base rate the same and the user rate from 450 to 475.
So moved.
Second?
Leaves the motion, and Peter's the second. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 So Arnie, just for us, when you get a second, you had a 4-month bill, just because I need an example. You're
3 months.
three months,
It was 96 days, I believe, a little more than 3 months.
96 days. And it was how many gallons, you thought?
My usage was 14,639 gallons. So it's at about 140, 150 a day or something?
690.
690, okay.
Yeah,
You're doing the math in your head?
Well, no, I'm writing it down because it's one of these things that I'll play with later.
Yep.
There's lots of different reports, Peter, that we can print out of the program too, so.
That's
Yeah,
true.
and it's broken down by the base charge and then the consumption charge, and it's for water and sewer.
Well, but it's also, see, I don't have village water and sewer, so you are my example.
Yeah.
Whether you want to be here or not.
Yeah, you end up paying for a service like that, one way or another, whether
Right.
it's a private one that you have to sink some money into it over time, or, redoing this leach field or a septic system or a well, or you just pay continually. I think we're lucky in Chester that the water is as good as it is. I mean, I don't think there's any chemicals whatsoever in it, unless once in a while they might have to add a little bit of chlorine when they're working on something, but other than that, it's better than the bottled water in the stores, that's for sure. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's right, me too. And we'll start with our select board meeting, which is what, 6:40?
Yep.
First item on the agenda is additions or deletions to the agenda. I had one did Mr. Kelly talk to you about giving us an update on
No.
the flood response?
Nope, I haven't heard from Frank.
So we're just going to let it just go?
I would say let it go. He's going to be at, the Citizen Advisory Committee is going to be at your next meeting, so he may just give it
So
then,
just
because
do it then.
he'll already be here, right?
Anybody have any additions or deletions or changes to the agenda?
I have none.
None.
Next item is to approve our minutes from the October 18th Select Board meeting. I think we're going to have to postpone that because I can't vote on it. I wasn't at that meeting, and there's only 2 of us that could vote on it, and we definitely need 3 to approve it, so we
Yep.
could just hold it till next meeting.
I'll add him to the next agenda.
So can I make a comment about it so it can be
Yeah.
fixed for the next
Yeah,
one?
sure. Yeah.
So on page
We just can't
9 of 11, line 34, the name Kate Martins, the last name is spelled incorrectly, should be Martens.
Thanks, Lee. Anything else?
That was all I had.
All right, and we'll hold off the approval on that till the next meeting. Next item is citizens' comments. If there is someone who'd like to address the board regarding an agenda item that is not on the, an item that is not on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. Are there any citizens' comments? I'm looking your way, Bill. And old business. Julie, can you take us through our old business list?
Sure, there's not a whole lot this time around, because pretty much all I'm working on is grants and floods. So not a whole lot of old business. The Housing Commission had their first meeting this past Tuesday. So they have, just so the board is aware, they have set their regular monthly meeting for the 4th Tuesday of each month at 6 PM. If anybody wants to attend. And quickly in follow-up, I know I had told you guys about forming a just little group to work with me on kind of the interior renovations of the Academy building. So we have set a date, that's going to be November 6th at 10, just here in my office. So if anybody wants to be a part of that, you're welcome to join in. And Lee and Arnie and myself met with Mike Curtis, who is a part-time resident here in Chester, for some work on to help with the solar field purchase and helping. So he gave us some good direction. I mean, I know the rest of the board isn't here other than you guys, but he gave good direction. So hopefully we'll be moving in a positive direction with the solar field as well.
I think it was a productive meeting just to get the information that we
Absolutely.
got.
Well, to
And it-
focus me on what I need to, it was extremely helpful.
And it seemed like because of the situation, we're in being a town, there's a lot of things that don't apply as far as taxes and capital gains and
Yeah.
a lot of other things that normally would apply to an acquisition like that. But it seemed positive, and he's been in the business
Yeah.
for a long time, and he definitely has some good resources and some information. And please,
So-
thanks for attending the
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah,
even though
sorry.
you're-
Sorry about all the noise.
So how it really got left is, just for people, because I know, Bill, that you're very interested in this and other people might be, I am going to be getting the contracts from the other 2 off-takers, because we need to see what their contracts say, and if buyout of their contract is even an option, number 1. And then number 2 is I'll be getting him all of our data as far as our usage, the rates that we pay, our overall town usage, and then he has spreadsheets with formulas, and he's going to plug all of our numbers in to his stuff. He's not going to charge us, he's just doing this to help out the town, which is great, but then he's going to kind of help me figure out the ROI from that, so.
So I did have one question I was thinking about on the way home, and that was Greenbacker is not the original signer of the contract that we have.
Right.
And the question I had related to whether or not, because we have the option to buy, whether they have to sell it to us if we exercise that option. And so I know they've been dragging their feet for months, almost a year. And is there anything that we can do to incentivize them to sell to us other than giving them $2.4 million, which we're not going to do.
Right.
So I don't know if there's, if the contract language, or Bill, if you remember anything from that time, whether or not that was the agreement was if anybody wants to buy it, if we want to buy it, they would sell it to us regardless of whether or not they wanted to. So. I
Well, we
don't know.
have to have we have an option to purchase at 7 years. We instituted our option.
Right.
And we have entered into negotiation. So I think that option comes with it, that if you can come to a negotiation point, and that's going to be where the kicker is.
Right.
But we have two appraisals, theirs and ours, that are $100,000 apart. So
Right.
you can't really argue that. I think they would be legally hard pressed to decide they're not going to sell.
Okay, that's what I
Because
wanted.
that's where I'm feeling. Haven't passed the bar, so, I wouldn't put a stamp on it, right? So, but, I mean, certainly in the conversations with Jim, I can have
Yeah.
that conversation. But that's what would lead me to think that
Right.
they do have to, if we can come to a negotiation point.
Well, and that's what my expectation would be. However, I hate to see us spend a bunch of money or
Oh,
time and
absolutely.
not have it
Absolutely.
be something that
Yeah.
they would feel obligated to do.
Once I get those two contracts from the other two off-takers, my plan was to just send that up to Jim anyway, and have him review those to see what our options are. Oh, I can certainly ask him then.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
It was vague in the original document about the 7-year buy, and in fact, there was one at 7, I think there was one at 14
One and
also.
14, yeah,
Yeah.
714.
But it didn't have any specifics or anything spelled out, this had to happen. It was more like
Right.
an option, and then,
Right.
and it left it very vague and
Right.
very open. But it's a good question, you go through all that work, through all that trouble, and then they're going to turn around and say, sorry, we're not going to take your price.
Right.
But
Right.
I don't think
Yeah.
that's bargaining in good faith, and that might open up a whole nother door of legal, ramifications or whatever that go
Yeah.
on from there.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it'll happen. I think it would be a
I
great,
think it'd be a
great
great
asset
asset
to the
to the
town.
town.
To basically be able to power all the town's different departments pretty much entirely on solar. No, except unless when it's dark. Anything else on old business?
Not for me.
Anybody else have anything for old business?
I have nothing.
Nope.
Next item is short-term rental. The last meeting, I wasn't here, and you guys kept the conversation on the...
Very short.
Very short. We're missing 2 members tonight.
Yeah.
I appreciate that Hugh Quinn is here from our planning commission. I just had some thoughts about this, and one of them was that maybe we get the planning commission involved in this a little more too, and throw some of it back to them and see what they can come up with, or some ideas also besides us doing this at the same time. Some of the courses of action that we could take or through an ordinance, and that would be the select board. But a lot of the actions that possibly could be taken are items that the planning commission would have to deal with and put into the zoning regulations and stuff. So maybe letting them have a little bit of leeway and a little bit of time also to look over what they think might be appropriate to do or not to do, and this might help with the whole process instead of waiting till the end, because 6 months comes up pretty quick. We're going through, when did it start? October 1st or, yeah,
October 31st.
31st?
We gave a,
It's been
yeah,
a month.
we
huh?
gave but we gave a moratorium until October 31st.
Okay, yeah, for people, but the 6 months started October 1st for us to make a decision on.
For you guys, yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Some of it, if the discussion, if we were going to have it a little more in depth, was going to be a question about where do we want to go as a select board? What options have we considered, or what ideas have we talked about, or what direction do we want to go in? And I guess we don't have to do that today because we are a little bit shy on our board, and I would like to have the full board.
The question I have is whether or not we've gotten any more data, whether any more responses have come in, and Preston's not here. I don't know. Do you know, Hugh? Yeah. So I understand, yeah, I agree that having a discussion with the full board and getting an update on the data that's been collected would be very, very helpful.
Anything else on short-term rentals, Hugh? I wish there was more to discuss at this point, and hopefully give you some direction, but I think we're in agreement that if the Planning Commission wants to discuss this and put it on their agenda and try to work at it also from their angle, I think we'd more than welcome some conversation and help from the Planning Commission also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing.
Sorry, Hugh, you got to come up.
Hi, this is Hugh Quinn. The only thing I'll offer up, just as a result of our joint meeting, so I did jot down what I thought I heard were some goals, that could be used to help guide whatever the work is that we're going to do. So if at some point in time it makes sense for me to share what I thought I heard in the joint meeting with the Select Board and have the Select Board say, yes, these are the goals that make sense, then that would provide the Planning Commission guidance when we're, if you choose to have us sort of try to sort through the different options and make recommendations, so.
All right, thanks, Hugh. Maybe we should have another joint meeting.
Well, I think you need to kind of, you have to wait and see, because we have, there's 2 places that I know now have been fire inspected, and the thing is, once you say you go over 8, then the fire inspector comes in,
The state, yeah.
and they're going to be closed, because you can't go back to 8 once you bring the fire inspector in. And that's their biggest thing, is that their property, because now they have, the inspection would have to be disclosed when they sold the house. So, I mean, it's kind of a huge wake-up call for anything over 8 when the fire inspector goes through. You might even see a reduction in the number that you have because they can't meet the fire code.
Yeah. And maybe this issue isn't going to be as big as we thought it was going to be, because it has died down. I think things have quieted down. There was the big initial rush of everybody jumping on the bandwagon, buying houses and Airbnb and all that. The inventory in town, there was very few houses for sale, but now it's starting to, there's more on the market. Of course, the prices are a lot higher than they were, which makes it hard for people to afford housing around here. But there are more places available than there were a while ago. That being said, I still see this as a business. When I looked at the regulations under what was allowed and not allowed in different areas, tourist lodging was a conditional use in almost in all the districts except for 3. In those 3, it wasn't even allowed. So no matter where it was a conditional use. And then there was some other ideas about a 2-year waiting period, and it goes back to the point. We have to figure out what direction that we want to go, and to help the Planning Commission cover their end of it and our end of it also. But it'll be on the agenda at our next meeting also. So.
Excellent.
Next item is our general fund budget review, and our public safety directors are here. We have them all. We have Matt Wilson, Tom Williams, Mike Ryanzio, and Alicia DiPietro. I got it right. I grew up in an Italian neighborhood. It was everywhere. You want to take us through this, and then we'll end up speaking with you guys about the budget and how it goes?
Sure. So what you have is obviously first round draft, right, of public safety, just the public safety department's income and expense. Obviously numbers missing, right? We don't set Andover's assessment till the beginning of December. So that's a big revenue line that's not in there. The other thing that's not in are capital transfers. And those don't plop in until we actually finalize the capital plan. So probably your next view of this, I will have done a first pass at the capital plan. One of the things, just so that you all know, for the capital plan that I'm waiting on is I'm waiting on our audited fund balance for the capital plan. Because I may propose some playing with a little bit of that fund balance again, just to kind of help. So I'm waiting on that to know what that audited number is. Should have that probably within the next couple weeks. But this is first stab. This is the department as a whole that you're likely going to see, or you will see, as an increase. And some of this is just simply because of some changes that we're making in these departments, some improvements that we're making to these departments, and some things that these departments are doing within the community in the services that they're providing, and I will let the chiefs talk about that and explain what they're up to. But do you have any questions on the just budget lines that are jumping out at you? Or the guys can talk about what they're doing, and that might kind of help explain a little bit of what's going on too.
I think maybe,
You want to hear from them first? You want to hear from them?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think you should.
who would
And
like
they're
to
going to, I
start
think
it
they're going to
off?
kind of present together.
This is a whole show.
And
Actually, the reason for it is the whole public safety background.
Try to get a little closer to it.
Matt, why don't you come sit up here?
Tom Williams, Chief of Police and Chief of the Ambulance Service, for now. We're trying to run things as
Maybe the
as
mic
a
can get you.
Department of Public Safety as a whole, as the actual Department of Public Safety unit, or a, not sure the model. And with that said, it's basically, people change hats when they have to. We've got multiple people within the departments that are cross-trained. We go right down the list here. Myself, I'm in all 3 departments. I'm a firefighter, I'm in the EMS, I'm in the PD. If as needed during the day, if I have to change hats and it's possible I'm not in the middle of a domestic or something else that I can't leave, we change hats and we get it done. Mike is also a part-time officer. He's the deputy chief for the ambulance. He's an instructor in a lot of the stuff we're doing in the background, which I'll get to as I go down this. Alicia is first responder trained also, and is there Monday through Friday, which I'll explain how that all merges together and gives us quite an advantage for no money to the taxpayer. Alicia also has a background in emergency management, which we're tapping into across the board in a lot of different topics. The emergency services piece of it and the emergency management part of it, and revamping some of the emergency management planning and some new ideas to cover things that we've heard from the public. Reaching out to vulnerable populations and during storms and natural disasters and or power outages, whatever it ends up being, to just kind of bring a better service to the town of Chester. I'm just going to go down my list and try and go through this pretty quickly. Just so you keep in the background of all of this, the town manager, Julie, had asked us in the beginning a while ago, you know, departments can spend, and you're always asked to watch what you're spending, kind of pull back a little bit. Do you really need that, or do you want that type thing? And that's the normal day-to-day stuff anyway. What we were asked to do is look at our departments and see, is there any way in your department you can actually bring back a little bit of income? With a PD, kind of hard to do that because that's not our business. But we have found kind of some inventive ways to bring a little bit of money back into the system. Granted, it's not going to make anybody a millionaire on their tax bill, but if you do it across the board, and some of these numbers that I have here, it's quite significant, the little changes that we're making and finding a way back. And I'm speaking for the ambulance also. Mike's going to give you kind of a rundown of the EMS side of it, and Alicia's going to give you a rundown of what we're trying to do with the emergency management part of it. I want to give you the police part of it first, because that's my main job here. The biggest change with the police department is our push on community policing. That was what was shouted and brought out from anyone and everyone that you've talked to, community policing, community policing. That comes with a lot of different things, and we've actually started a lot of different things. It's working very well. We're doing it very successfully to the point that the things that we're doing in public safety as a whole in the police department is being looked at, and we're being asked, how are you doing that? You can follow other departments around the area on Facebook on a lot of the things that we've done, and it's almost like a mirror image. They're starting to mirror that in other places. Granted, things we do it for Chester because it works here. What works here may not work in Springfield. It may not work in Claremont. It may not work, in Manchester, Vermont. But we're concerned about what works here. If somebody else gets the idea and tries it there and it works, great. And if we see something that we think can work here and we'll implement it and try it, great. We're all for it. If not, we kind of put it off to the side. If we can't tweak it to get it to where we want it to be and be successful with it, we move on to the next thing and spend our time on that. We formed a citizen advisory committee for the police department. We started that. It has 5 people that were appointed by the select board. We just had one recently changed, so we have all 5 members again now. They're basically a liaison between the police department and the community. The community also has an open door with the police department to come see me at any point, or any of the officers that they run into on the road, to chat with them about whatever. But this is part of the community policing in the background. It's being done in numerous places. Some places it's failed miserably, and other places it's gone very well. As far as I'm concerned right now, we have a very good relationship, at least between the PD and the advisory board. We have a very good working relationship. It's open on both sides. They're still fairly new as far as an advisory board goes. They're kind of feeling their way out as to what exactly are we supposed to be doing. They're the bridge between the community and the PD. It's a way for me to put information out there, let it trickle down to the public through them. It's also a non-police contact, so if someone's kind of iffy about whether they want to come speak to an officer, they're really kind of hedging on, I want to get this information to the PD, but I really don't feel I can do it. It's through the advisory board. We have it. It's working very successfully. We've involved them in the lieutenant's promotion process. They've got a copy of all of our rules and regulations, which they are reading very slowly and carefully. They're finding that it's not as entertaining as they thought it was going to be. It's quite a read. And then the one thing I push with them on that too is they've got a book with, I think it's 72 or 74 regulations in it. One of the regulations is 20-something pages on its own, 29 or 39 pages on its own. We have to know that inside and out, and not just one at a time. We have to know 7 or 8 of them and have that compute in our brain in a second's moment, you know. So having them be able to understand it, see how complicated things can be, and then be able to explain it in just layman's terms to anybody that wants to chat with them about it, so that they can see kind of what we have to go through during the day, and so on. It's a great program that we've started. It's working very well, and it's very successful.
Tom, can I just ask you a question?
Yes.
If somebody wanted to approach the Citizen Advisory Committee, board, or whatever it is, how would they do that? What would be a good way for them to contact? Let's say somebody has a question and they want to address the police department directly. How would they contact that board?
To direct the police department directly?
No, the Citizens
advisory.
Advisory, yeah.
We meet once a month, and I think which second Tuesday of the month?
Second Tuesday of each month.
Second Tuesday of each month here, right where we're sitting now. So if they want to come sit in, they don't even have to say anything. If they just want to be a part of it, there are open portions of it, just like it runs just like the select board meeting. So there's a comment section that they can throw in, even if it's not on the agenda, and then they can bring up topics. If they don't want to bring it up in that format, they can look up who the committee members are, and there's contacts for them. I think it's on the town site has them. We
Okay.
can get them
Okay.
for people. We're trying to come up with a website specifically for just the PD. So it's not the town website, it's just the PD. It's got information on it, it's got emergency management stuff on it, and it has direct contacts to the board members. So
Okay.
if somebody wants to speak directly with them, they can.
Great, thank you.
The next thing on my list here, staffing. So I'm just kind of giving you a rundown of what we've done this year. It kind of explains what we've used the money for and what we're planning on continuing with. Staffing, when I started as the chief, we had 3 full-time officers. We're supposed to have 5. That's 3 full-time officers running 7 days a week. That's 7 day shifts and 7 night shifts with 3 people. It's not an easy task, but it was done and it was taken care of, and we didn't have any issues other than being tired. But we got through it. We are up to 4 full-time now. We had 1 part-time back then. We now have 4 part-time. It sounds like a big number, but the way they lay out, the way they actually work their shifts, it's the equivalent of having the 2 part-time that I'm supposed to have to begin with, hour-wise. So we're spending the same amount of money, but we're actually covering more shifts. We've got more shifts that are safer for the officers because we're running 2 officers on a shift instead of the 1. Some of them, we still have 1 because we only have so many officers, but we're kind of playing with the schedule to try and get it covered so everybody's safe on both sides. One of the big things we did to change, there was, as I said, big changes in the PD, was uniforms. There's a different look to the uniforms. We now have, I mean, it sounds simplistic, the gold stripe on the pants. It makes your regular duty pants look a little bit more formal, which the image is a lot of being a police officer. You've got to present as a professional, and that was part of it. The pant stripes, our new covers. I know you've seen them out, the public's seen them out, we've had a lot of comments on them. We wore ball caps before, and I'm not a proponent of the ball caps. You need to look the part from head to toe. We've got the covers. Again, it doesn't seem like a big deal to some people. It is as far as building the image of the PD. We've changed that, we've gone to that, and it's actually made quite a difference. As I said, change from the ball caps, new coats. The new coats that we picked, this is actually the inside liner that I'm wearing to it. It's reflective on the back. The outside is actually like a raincoat parka. It has reflective striping, so it is ANSI rated, so we are covered as far as being out in traffic, being out of crashes, any scene that you're in the dark. So on, like the fire department has to have theirs striped a certain way so that you can be visible from a certain distance. We purchased those. I say that loosely. We got a grant for those also. So we're evening the stuff out. We needed them. We had different jackets. The uniforms were not the same. You'd see one officer wearing one type of raincoat, another officer wearing a totally different one, another officer wearing not even that coat, but a third style coat. We made it so it's all uniform. So you see a police officer, you see a police officer. And we also merged them with what the fire department has, same coat, different color. And what the ambulance is, they have some already, they're getting some more. So if you see the reflective coat, it'll say Chester Ambulance, Chester Fire Department on the back, or Chester Police Department, like it says on this one. No, take too long.
Nice.
Which is reflective. If we're out at something like, let's say, the Fall Festival, and we get this weather because it comes early, you're going to look down through the Fall Festival, and you can pick out the emergency personnel by the color of their jacket. From a distance, you can see them at the other end of the park. If you got a dark blue bottom like this coat is, you've got a police officer. If you've got a light, like a royal blue, it's an EMS person. The bottom part of the jackets are red, it's the fire department. And that was a way to be more visible to the public. I was told we want to see more police presence on top of the being out and patrolling more, running radar in the spots we were asked to run them, and so on and so forth. We are fluorescent now and reflective, so we are as visible as I can possibly get people so far. But with that said, that's a $4,000 cost for the coats that I needed. We got a grant that covered that. So it's not costing the taxpayer much, if anything, on that. And the coats were, they call them 5-in-1. I don't get it. The chief could actually explain them since we got them through the company that he works for. But instead of buying a fleece liner for the spring and the fall, and then a raincoat for when it rains, and a parka, waterproof parka for the winter time when you're getting snowed on in the snow like today, that's really wet. These jackets take care of all in one. So they're a little bit more expensive. They're good quality. They're top of the line. They should last a while. So we got those instead of buying numerous other ones that are either going to wear out, don't look good, so on and so forth. The next thing was radios. Julie and I were able to get a radio grant. We were the only ones to get a radio grant. Fire, EMS, and police put in for it. It's a leftover grant from COVID from 2020. So when people couldn't fulfill the grant they got, this money had to go back in the pot. We put in for it. We got just about $30,000 in new radios for the PD. That's every cruiser has new radios, both VHF and UHF, police and fire. We got all new portables. And there's a couple, I think, extra. I don't remember what the extra ones were because we got denied on a couple of them for like the officer's personal car from when they were responding in to get a cruiser to go to a call after hours. But still, $30,000 and not a penny of that's out of the taxpayer's pocket. With that said, with the radios, we had a merger that we were trying to do to get our dispatching services through Hartford that would put all public safety on the same dispatch system. A lot of background stuff I won't get into here with VSP getting rid of us or trying to get rid of municipalities and so on and so forth, but somewhere in the process the legislature decided to put it all on hold. So everything that was out there, the money that was out there all kind of got frozen for now. We're kind of in limbo right now. We're kind of waiting to see where we go with that. Whether the state steps it up and gets us an answer fairly soon, which I don't think is going to happen, or whether we find a more clever way around the issue doing the same thing. But what it ends up is cost. Where's the cost coming from? We're trying not to put the burden on the town and trying to put it back onto the state since they want us off of their system. We purchased 8 bulletproof vests, and as you can imagine, those are not cheap. I think they were about $1,200 apiece. We were able to get the Leahy grant, which pays for half, so whatever you're allotted. I thought initially that all 8, so they'll pay for 4. They only gave us enough for 6, so they'll pay for 3. Either way, it's still $3,600, I believe, is half of what they'll pay for. But again, Alicia is like deep into looking at grants on everything that can affect public safety, emergency management, anything we're trying to go for, which she'll get into some of them in a minute. In that, she found in the 82-page document, I don't know why she would want to read a government document of 82 pages, but in her reading of that, she found a clause in there that if your town is affected by a natural disaster, what did we just have? A flood. Not sure how that correlates to the buying of the vests, but whichever way you can apply for the waiver. We've applied for the waiver. They will pay 100% of that. So we're looking at $9,600 that hopefully will be totally paid for by the government, by that Leahy grant. So we're trying to, in the process of looking for income, I consider that income. If the taxpayer's not paying for that, we're finding ways that we're covering the money, so we're keeping what we've got in the town coffers versus paying for it out of pocket and draining that budget down to nothing. We're coming up with either ingenious ways or inventive ways, however you want to look at, or just ways by looking. If you don't look, you can't figure it out yourself. So it's happening. Vehicles, this year we were able to get 2 vehicles, thanks to the select board approving that. We were able to lock in a finance rate. That way, if the economy tanks next year, if it's going downhill, if it continues to go downhill, wherever you stand on that, it's locked in. So all we did was switch the year that we do 3 on, 1 off. We just switched the off year. That's all we did. So we got one early. But with that, I was also cruisers short. So when we have these things like the floods, the power outages, the funeral home fire, I call in extra people because it's usually me on the shift and I need some help because I can't direct traffic on both ends of a road or fight the fire or do whatever I'm doing. I was out of vehicles. We were in the process of buying one, switching one, so we had to give them one to take stuff out of, and we were short. So this is nice now that we are up to speed on vehicles. I have enough vehicles, so when I call people in, we actually have a functioning amount of cars that we can get a lot more done with. With that said, too, we ended up keeping the old car 3, at least temporarily. That car has become our core car. We have reenacted or reactivated the core program, which was the community-oriented radar enforcement, which the chief here came up with when he came out of the police academy.
Years ago, a long time ago, Matt.
But anyway, traffic safety is what it comes down to, is traffic safety. And all I've gotten for comments from people is we want more traffic safety, more traffic. Speed is crazy here. We want people slowed down. With that said, we've done a ton of stuff, and I'll show you the stats, which will speak for themselves. But we needed the extra car. The extra car has become the core car, so now when an officer wants to do a little bit extra time, the core program was self-funding. So when you write tickets, it goes through the state kicks back a smaller amount, and I'll get into it with the ordinances too, but you get a bigger amount when it's actually adopted by your ordinances. That, in theory, if it goes back into the town pot and that goes back into the budget, it's paying for itself kind of in a long roundabout way, but it's like a self-sustaining type thing. So we're amping that back up again. And that officer, when they're on that, that's all they're out to do. They're not out necessarily going to domestics, to accidents, to whatever. They are doing the enforcement portion of the traffic safety.
So Chief, is that the 4th car then? You have 3 regular and the 4th is the core?
And the 4th one, it says number 4 on it, and it also, we put the decal on the side that says core, so you'll know that that one is the traffic safety car that's out and about. That car is also going to be used, one of the officers was just sent to Commercial Motor Vehicle Enforcement School, which is the weights, the permits, the inspections, everything that goes along with the commercial vehicle traffic that we're getting through town. Again, another issue or complaint that's been brought to my attention is the speed and the types of trucks and the sizes of the trucks coming through and causing all sorts of problems. We now have one person, you have to be certified specifically in that. I mean, there's some things that I can enforce under all my certifications. If you want to get deeper into that and really get to the nitty-gritty on the commercial motor vehicles, you have to go to school for that. I sent him probably 2 weeks ago to a school, and he's certified, and we are getting, I don't know how many $1,000 they cost. They're quite expensive, but 6 of the certified scales from DMV that we carry in the back of that car. They're heavy, but you can take them out at a site where you've got a truck stop and roll the tires up onto it and weigh the truck in sections and then do what you got to do for overweight issues.
And we're
It's
not
just-
paying for those. That's something DMV
That's
is giving us.
free. And the course was free also. So again, we're doing things to get to a point that's going to potentially bring in maybe a little bit of revenue through whatever fines are written or so on. The PD stats. And this is what I was alluding to a minute ago. So I find which page it's on. I got way too many pages. Yeah. Sorry about that. I put it where I could find it, and obviously I hit it very well. Anyway, we may have to move on until I can find where I stuffed that. Here, you look at that, I'll move on. I will circle back around to that. Under the traffic stuff, thank you. Terrible getting old, isn't it? So just a quick rundown. I'm not going to get into numbers for like revenue generated, because that's not what we're here for. But you can see by the increase in traffic stops and stuff, not every traffic stop is a ticket. There's a lot of warnings that are written. What I want from the officers in town is I want contacts. I don't care if they write a ticket. I don't care if they issue a warning, as long as they're making contact and at least letting people know what the issue is that they're stopping them for. That works in all different ways. It's officer discretion whether they write it, they don't write it. Every one of those stops is documented either on a written warning or ticket. So with that said, year to date, and that was as of the 25th of October, I had these run. The traffic stops. Last year at this time, and I'm not sure, I don't want to call it an excuse, but it was 67. It was 67. Now, you can add COVID in there, you can add lack of manpower. We only had 3 officers working for quite a bit of time there. There's other issues. I'm not going to make any excuse for it. It is what it is. It was 67. This year to this time, it's 696. It's a 91% increase in traffic enforcement within the town. And that is from, it says year to date. I'm still not at full staff, but as of April, I had enough officers to say competently that's when we kicked it into overdrive, because we had enough officers to be safe and enough officers to actually go out and do something other than kind of chasing our own tail, catching up with complaints and other things like that. So 91% increase is quite high. Calls for service went from last year 1,609 to this year of 2,432. There are reasons for that too, but that's a 34% increase in calls for service for the town. Okay, so just overall in revenue coming in from that, and I'm going to say potential revenue, because sometimes they go to court, sometimes they win, sometimes they don't win. You can't predict any of that. There's no way to depend on any of this, but there's an 87% increase in total ticket revenue from last year to this year. So, and it's a considerable amount.
Chief, when you said the incidents from 1,600 to 2,400 already this year,
Yeah.
is that using the same criteria that they used to judge incidents by the categories? There's nothing changed on how they
just
were
did
tallied?
overall.
All the same?
We just did overall. That's everything that's in the computer. If it generates a number for a case, which is everything from traffic stops to directed patrols at the school for crossings, to standing by at a meeting, school board meeting, select board, whatever we're asked to come to. even if it's just having an officer go through. If we're doing something, we don't get it all the time, because sometimes you're in a hurry to get to something else, or you have to go to something else, but a case should be punched for each thing we're doing, because we're busy doing something, and the only way to really keep track of that is to have a case that says, hey, I was busy during that time. So that accounts for some of it too, because we're really keeping track of what we're doing.
Thank you.
And I think that's most of the PD stats themselves. With that said, things that are coming up, I was able to join, we've had Governor's Highway Safety. It's not called that right now, but that's what it sticks in my head after, well, going on 34 years in law enforcement here. It's called something different, same program, different name. It's basically highway safety. It's traffic enforcement for speed, cell phone usage, seatbelt usage, aggressive driving, anything that falls under those categories. We rejoined. You have to be under the state grant, and there's certain police departments that get the grants. Rutland County Sheriff's Department is one of the ones that holds the funds for it. I sat down and talked with Lieutenant Gino from the Sheriff's Department up there, and he agreed to take us on underneath the grant. What that does is it provides, I would say, incentive. You're more apt to, if you have the ability to work at time and a half, better than straight time, especially with these days when needing more and more to pay your bills. The guys can go out and work traffic safety under Governor's Highway. Their time on that detail is paid for by the state under that highway grant. You obviously have to be productive. You can't sit there and watch your wallet get bigger while you're not doing anything. It's a give and take thing, but they provide that. They provide that ability to go out there and do that. With that, there's 5 events during the year. We may end up in Killington. We may end up in Springfield doing a DUI roadblock or DUI enforcement in a town. If a town's got a specific issue, they may end up down here doing a saturation patrol, which is basically every time you turn around, you're going to trip over a police car someplace running radar in town, which I told them is I would like that at least once, if not multiple times. We'll take all the help we can get, especially if it's on the state's dime. So, I mean, I'm just honest about it, but it works. It works for us. So, and with that said, I've got a radar coming, and you think, okay, big deal. They're $8,000 a piece. I said I needed one. I had a 4th car I didn't plan on, but we kind of worked it and got it to where we wanted it, needed a radar. Came up with an old one in it, all of a sudden we're being sent one. We haven't done anything with Governor's Highway Safety yet, but they see the potential because I showed them the numbers. And they're like, as long as you guys do something like you're doing, you're good. We've got a radar that we've got brand new. We're going to send it down to you, use it as you need it. So again, a little bit of money savings. So there's $8,000 not coming out of the taxpayers. With the Governor's Highway Safety, there's a potential with the school. I'm going to mention the school in a minute too. We work with the school. That's all part of the community policing, and that's just what we do is work with the school because there's a lot of members of the public and the public's children that are in there. The vice principal and the principal, the new ones that are there, are very receptive to the police being there, which is good. The previous ones were too. We're trying to take another step. Every time we get a new administrator in there, we take another step forward. We're helping them with their emergency planning. The day-to-day planning, what are we doing if, how are the police interacting with the children in there? And like right now, there's an open door policy that we just pull up, we walk in, we just let Kelly know at the front desk, hey, we're here. So it's not surprising when somebody says, hey, there's a police officer in the hallway. Hey, we're just here walking the hallways. We're not enforcing no smoking in the bathroom. Hey, do you have a hall pass? We're not there for that. We talk to the kids in the hallway. We talk with the staff in the hallway. We just make a presence known. We're there. So that it's not that, hey, the cops never come here. We're present there just like we're present everywhere else. With that relationship, one of the things that came up is both of them are a big supporter of an SRO, the school resource officer. Not something that's in my budget and not something that's probably totally within their budget. Governor's Highway Safety has a piece of their program. It's being run in Windham County right now with Sergeant Roy. He teaches in, I think, 6 or 7 schools. He has a traveling driver ed highway safety show, is what I call it. Anything from big screens like this one here, all linked together with the driving simulator. You sit in a driver's seat that actually moves you as you're going. you have to actually drive the car. It will do whatever. If you have it in standard and you stall it out, the car will buck and jolt and all that. But anyway, he teaches highway safety, not the driver ed portion of it, but what happens when this happens. This is what's going to be enforced, so on and so forth. It teaches people safe driving skills. He's too busy to spread out anymore. He's maxed out as he's part-time with them. He asked if we would be interested in a program up here, so I brought that to the school and said, what do you think if we merge with your driver ed program? It gets us in with the kids. It's a very short amount of time in the morning, but Governor's Highway Safety will pay for the officer, will pay for all the equipment, pay for the uniforms, pay for the time that's on that detail, so on and so forth. So thinking big picture, if we are looking at a school resource officer, maybe the town kicks in a little bit, maybe the school district kicks in a little bit. Now you've got it split. It's a more reasonable number amongst the parties that are looking at it. We now have another officer in town. We can pull them from that at some point, then they go on the town dime, but it's another more creative way to get another officer, at least at times. When they're at the school, they're committed to the school. Obviously, they can break loose if there's something really bad going on in town, but that's what we're looking at. So there's just other things going on in the background. The one thing I didn't get into, because I figured these guys would start laughing, is I looked at the whole Department of Public Safety thing, and I kept calling it a giant bowl of spaghetti, which is kind of messy. Not what you want to put out here in public, but we got a cleaner version of it. It's a giant ball of yarn. If you watch the red piece of yarn in there and it goes through this whole thing, how many times does it retouch the blue one? And then how many times does the pink one retouch the orange one, if you know what I'm saying? Public safety is like that. I tried to break down just the PD stuff, but the PD stuff blends in with the EMS stuff. And then the PD stuff blends in with the emergency management stuff. The PD stuff's blending in with the fire stuff. You can't talk one without going off on the tangent on another piece of it. So it was easier. That's why 3 of us are here. I didn't know what Matt had to talk about with his, but anytime you want to jump in.
If you have an opportunity, that's just sitting there
But I will
straight-faced.
say, you've got representation for the directors of the departments here, and we are on the same page. We are working together. Some things have worked, some things don't work so well. Doesn't matter, because when it doesn't work, we tweak it and get it to function, and then we'll tune it up as we go. But we really haven't run into much that's not working yet. So anyway. We're still providing the school crossing at the elementary school. We do it as much as we're free, which is most of the time, but we do run into times that we just can't be there. We have to be at another call. We've got somebody in the office that we can't leave because they're in the middle of a complaint of something. But that is working great as far as making relationships with the parents, the kids. I mean, we get everything from high fives to hugs to, I had a set of mittens made for me. Safety fluorescent green mittens. So when I go out to cross them, I'm safe.
Wow.
Absolutely outstanding. The other things we attend as part of this community policing portion, we attend as much as we can. If there's an event in town, I don't think there's many that you're not going to see a police officer somewhere, whether they're coming through or whether they're hanging out talking to everybody and their brother there, which is usually me, but as you can tell.
Shocker.
Yeah. So we do numerous functions and outreach, and that's doing well coming back to us. And the big one that was the biggest hit this summer, I think, was the ice cream. Detective Waddell was able to get 200 and something gallons of ice cream from the truck stop. And big story behind it, we don't have to do that now. We were able to get it. What do you do with it? Well, you fill a cruiser in as many places as you could stuff a gallon of ice cream. We did. It went to the high school. It went to their freezer. Luckily, they had enough room. Then we said, what do we do with it? Well, the first thing is it's at the high school. We don't have to carry it again, and we will serve it to the kids at lunch. It was absolutely fantastic. We got a lot of talking in, got a lot of high fives and smiles and whatever, and I think it was a good interaction between the high school and the PD. We also invited DCF, one of the supervisors from DCF, as they work with the children in different avenues. The ambulance came up. It was actually a really good time. We did the same thing later on. Unfortunately, that week, they had an ice cream social at the elementary school, so that was going to be a lot of sugar, and I didn't want to apologize to that many parents. But we did that with the elementary school. We had the ice cream over there, and actually some of the teachers got into it and got scolded for eating as much as they did. But we're able to do things like that. We went to the library, the Whiting Library, had ice cream over there, or gave them ice cream for them to have a social, which was actually coming up later that week. We went to the Head Start preschool and actually had the kids wake up from a nap to ice cream. And again, I haven't heard from those parents, so it must have gone all right. And random people, the good part of it, we had so much of it that we were putting it in the cruisers and driving around, and I stopped a guy that was mowing his lawn, stopped him in the middle of the lawn, gave him a gallon of ice cream. He's like, what am I supposed to do with this? I said, get a spoon. And he did. He went in the house, got a spoon. I saw him later riding his lawnmower with a gallon of ice cream. One party, a couple that was walking down Elm Street walking their dog, they got a gallon of ice cream, and he said, how am I supposed to eat it? Got hands, right? It can be messy, but you can eat it. So just things like that, just outside the box stuff that you don't normally have with the police department, we're just doing it, and it works. And we'll keep doing it and keep finding new ways to do it, and so on. Fall Festival, we were at that for each day. Actually, we had officers each day dedicated to it, and one officer dedicated to it his job all day was just to walk around and be present. Not really a hard task, which, unless it's 100 degrees, and then it's really a little tougher. We had extra coverage on Halloween this year. We had 4 officers out, and luckily we did because we were busy nonstop, and it wasn't the Halloween stuff that kept us busy. It was everything else. So if you've got one officer on, which we had scheduled, all you would have had is that one officer running complaint to complaint to complaint. The kids and folks would have never seen a police officer because he would have been tied up the whole night. We're covering things, traffic details for highway. You know, they're not hiring a flagging company. We've got an extra officer, or we've got Mike at the ambulance who's not tied up on either administrative duties or a call. He switches uniforms, goes out in the cruiser, and is helping highway with the traffic around. I think they were doing sidewalk or painting crosswalks. The BMW gathering in town. That's a rather large motorcycle gathering, and they're here for a couple days, and we were present for a good majority of that. The more years that go on with that, the more we're connecting and finding things for us to do, and anything from helping them pick up their motorcycles when they dump them in their competition to blocking intersections so they can just not have to stop on a hill and don't get phone calls every 2 seconds that they're running a stop sign. So little things, but the normal parades, so on. We're at school board meetings, dances, art night at CAES, Chester Business Coalition meetings, open houses. We're out as much as we can possibly be out. To just be a presence, whether it's walking in and just saying hi, does anybody have anything for us or not? And pretty much, I think I've kind of beat that one down a little bit, but we're out there. We came up with an alarm policy, which you should have seen.
No, you will see it the next meeting.
Okay. So it's coming up at the next meeting. But with that said, one of the things behind the alarm policy, 99.9% of alarms, most of the time, which is most of the time, are false. So that's why you don't see a police officer screaming lights and siren 100 miles an hour down the road to go check a burglary alarm. There are certain alarms that we will pick up the speed for. We don't have to get into that now, but with that said, if most of them are false and we're responding to them, what about the ones that are repeatedly false? People aren't there at the house. Maybe they're living out of state and this is a second, third, fourth, eighth home. Who knows? Maybe they're not getting the information that these alarms are going off. It's costing the taxpayer to have an officer get in a car, start the car, use the fuel, go there, maybe go there 5 or 6 times a week because they're just not fixing whatever the problem is. In this alarm policy that we've adopted, come up with, modified, however you want to put it, there is a registration. There is an explanation form in there that says you're required to do the following. If you have an alarm go off, you have to bring it to your alarm company, so on and so forth. You need to get it fixed within a certain amount of time, or at least have its service looked at. And then if there's a bigger problem, take it offline. Whatever it ends up being, there's at least a fix to the repeated alarms. If it doesn't get fixed, there's a fine to the repeated alarms. It starts off low. The first one's free. I don't know right now what the fines are. I don't have the copy in front of me, but they go up $50, $150, $250, $350. At some point, it caps out. And if they're not being paid, they get taken off the list. We don't respond to it anymore. Because it's costing, let's say, me, the taxpayer that doesn't have an alarm, I'm paying for your alarm 6 times this week. That's not fair to me. You chose to get the extra. You chose to do that. You should be taking care of your alarm and so on and so forth. That's what we're trying to do, is just, if that's costing the town through the PD, we're never going to recoup the whole cost. But if we get $150 back on it, that's $150 that's not coming out of the taxpayer's pocket. Or it's costing $350 to have that officer there, here's $150 back. We're getting a little bit back. We'll never recoup the whole cost like that. It's not reasonable to do that, but that's the idea behind it. So that's another way we were coming up with, how do you have income come into the PD? It's not something we generate. It's something that goes on with the public and the people that have the alarms. They have to register for it. There's a fee to register it. We keep track of it. We respond to it. We keep track of the false alarms. We send out the notices that you're either delinquent in paying it, or here's your first fine, or whatever. It's all there. With that said, the ordinances in general, we're looking at adopting some of the oversized permit violation things into the ordinance. The reason for that, when you write a ticket in the state of Vermont, the town gets, wherever you are, whatever town you're in, unless you're on a state highway or a state entity or interstate, whatever, some money comes back to the town automatically. That's just the way the system works. And I want to say it's close, it's somewhere around 30%. I don't know if it was 32%, 28%. It's somewhere in there, but that's what the town gets back. If it's in your ordinance, and that, okay, the officer in Chester writes it, only it's not in the ordinance, you get 30% back. If it's in the ordinance and the same officer writes it, you get 82% back. Again, you're not paying for the officer's time necessarily with the 82% on a ticket, but would the taxpayer rather you get the 30% or the 80%? Because over time, with a 80-something% increase in traffic stops, or 91% increase in traffic stops, would you rather the 82% or the 30%? Because somewhere in there, you're either paying more or you're paying maybe not. Either way. Another way we're trying to help out with the budget. Not necessarily, you can't call it making money because you're getting money anyway. It's just we found that you can get a bigger chunk of the same amount for the same work that you're doing, so why not see if we can do something with that. So you'll see at some point the oversized load permit violation stuff, commercial motor vehicle stuff with weights, now that we have somebody that can do the enforcement on it. Maybe some of the oversized weights or the overweight trucks on the back roads when they're not supposed to be. We have no real way. I can tell you, yeah, that truck looks big. Probably shouldn't be back here because it's 2 feet down in the mud on this road in the spring. Now we can weigh it, and it's official, and it's done properly. One of the last things that we ended up doing was coming up all this talk about mental health and issues within the community, and one thing that drove with us was through EMS, drove it into our minds, was repeat callers to 911 on non-emergency issues. How do you go after that? Somebody calls an ambulance, you have to provide them the ride, you have to provide them the medical assistance, but when you take the person to the hospital and they walk out before the crew walks out because it's a closer ride to the grocery store, how do you stop that? There's another thing in the background that's driving that, which is what we've been talking about. How do you approach that? Social worker. Have them do their job to figure out where are we? Why is this happening? Is it lack of transportation? Is it a mental health issue? Is it something else? So I have an MOU with HCRS. We have not an embedded social worker because I actually told them I didn't want one or didn't need one at the PD, as we don't have the amount of business that I could justify that totally to have one for us. We share one with Bellows Falls PD, and the backup is VSP's social worker in Westminster. So we have two potential that we're told that one or the other will be on the phone with us if we need it, whether we're dealing with somebody with mental health or we have an issue that we need looked at because there may be a social background to it that's causing an issue, or they may need help that will hopefully stop the issues and the ambulance isn't going out 7 times because the person needs a ride to Springfield. The other thing, that the last piece of that too, and I wasn't sure where to drop it in here too, in Jim Baker's PD assessment, he talked about a 6th officer. We're not, it's in the background, it's just we're kind of throwing it out there. Do we need it? Do we not need it? What could we use it for? And how do we fund it? Again, going back to that whole governor's highway safety, that was something that was talked about. Could that be your 6th officer where most of the chunk of that pay is coming out of somewhere else? And then you just use them for day-to-day duties outside of that, how to do it. But we are talking about the sixth officer mainly because it was in the assessment, and it's just we're trying to go down through the assessment. The 2013 one was looked at, and I don't think a lot of it was, I won't say followed, but we didn't get anywhere with it. So when we got to the last assessment, it's out there. A lot of the same things are kind of echoed. We're doing something with it. We're going through and checking off, yeah, have we hit that? Do we even need that anymore? But we're doing it. The sixth officer was in, so we're looking at it. And I can't tell you whether good, bad, indifferent. We're really not at that point yet. We're just trying to weigh it out with what we've got and all of the stuff that's coming up in this public safety with all of us portion of it. The public safety model, and this, again, I'm speaking for all of us, the whole idea behind it, we have public safety written on, Department of Public Safety written on the cruisers, it's on the front of the building. The actual model is basically the staff, the same staff is performing different tasks or specialty positions to ensure a better result in service, response, and cost to the community. So with that said, most of that, if not all of it, is resulting in little to no cost to the taxpayer. So, and I'll say this right out, it's not, I'm going out of order, so I'll throw myself off, but with what we're doing right now, Monday through Friday, the town of Chester has a full-time police department, which they had, full-time ambulance service, which they did not have, and a full-time fire department, to a point, and take it for what it is. At any point, Monday through Friday, Mike is working full-time in the ambulance. I work full-time in the PD. There's usually maybe another officer around. Every officer is a first responder. That makes Mike's job as a full-time person over there, he can leave with the ambulance immediately. The police officer can meet him on scene. The police officer can be a first responder and be there even faster than the ambulance can be there because we're out and about already. There's all sorts of benefits to it by doing it this way. So on the ambulance side, every police officer is a first responder, state certified first responder. No matter what shift you're on, the police officer can respond to it. All we need is that EMT on the other side, one EMT from the ambulance to show up, grab the ambulance. If necessary and we meet them on scene, we park the car, we become the driver, where we can, which is most scenes we have been able to. And again, this is no cost. We're already getting paid. We're just switching hats and kind of combining positions. Alicia is our admin. She's there Monday through Friday. She's also first responder certified. All she has to do is lock our front door, put the sign on that says there's no admin there. She walks next door. She's now the first responder to assist the EMT. The select board allowed in a second full-time ambulance person. We now have 7 days covered with at least the EMT in the office. So now all you're doing is adding the first responder. Oh, well, wait a minute. The PD has first responders that are on 7 days a week. So really your ambulance service is full-time 7 days a week, during the day shift at least, because the ambulance doesn't have the full-time people at night. We're taking steps, but we're providing a huge service that's not costing anything just by mix matching these positions. Fire department has people that are first responder, EMT, crisscross. Everything under this public safety thing, we just switch hats. And one of the other things that came up too was we had a fire alarm call, and it's at the far end of town, which means your water, your other trucks that are coming, your extra help, they're far away. Only person in town is the fire chief. Everybody else is working elsewhere, unavailable. Mike switched hats. I got his fire gear. I locked my gun up, got my fire gear. You had 3 chiefs on the truck going to a fire. Technically, I mean, not by the book, but you've got a fire crew that can make a rescue. You've got a fire crew that can attempt a fast, quick knockdown of a fire, so on and so forth. But it's there, and you're not, the other portion of that is you're not waiting for somebody to respond from home. You've got one of the members coming from the Andover line. You have to wait for them to drive in to get their equipment, to get the truck, to get back out again. We're already there. So response times on EMS, police are already out there. Fire department, you potentially have the ability to, on a lot of them, kick up the response time or I should say, break down the response time to little to nothing, which is basically having a full-time department. They're at the station all the time, ready to go. We're just doing it a different way. and it's working. And people initially were surprised by it, and now, I won't say they almost expect it, but it's become the norm. They're not surprised to see a police cruiser and an ambulance. It's the norm now. And it's all in all for the overall safety and public that we're doing that. Just about done.
So soon?
We're going on an hour. Tom, we're going on an hour, so we need to hear from the other two
I
departments.
prepare,
Yeah,
that's all I
we're-
can say.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure everybody knows, we're doing a lot of stuff, and it's
Yeah.
worth putting
Yeah.
out there to everybody.
Yeah.
So I already covered it, response times are down there. One of the things in the background, too, that we're doing, Mike is an IC, he's able to instruct at the state level, certify at the state level. He's also an instructor with the tactical medic course, and Stop the Bleed, and a first aid and CPR instructor, which he's used that to trickle down, again, at no cost. The police need to be certified in first aid and CPR yearly, every other year, depending on which one. One of them's 2 years, one of them's 1 year. We have it free now. Mike has also certified several of the officers, firefighters, EMS people as instructors in first aid, CPR, AED, which then allows us to go out into town. Mike is taught at one of the churches, the AED, because they got new AEDs and weren't sure how to use them. We've put on classes, different classes. The Stop the Bleed class, we actually, I think one of them was done right on a picnic table on the green. Invited people out and sat down around the picnic table and had it. It's an hour course, but it's a important course if you are bleeding out, which a lot of injuries do result in that, and it's a very simple course to take. We're offering all those now, and some of these, Mike will get into too, I think are paying for the certifications, and then there's a little bit left over. We're taking a little bit left over, and we kind of put it in a training fund, and that redoes our training supplies and equipment and stuff like that. I mean, it's not that much, but hopefully over time, the more that's being taught there, the more we can put back into the pot without asking for money from anybody. Response times, I got that. Cost savings, so I kind of broke it down so you could get kind of a quick view of it. If I work Monday through Thursday, Steve, who's our facilities director, he's a captain on the fire department. He's around Monday through Friday, usually available to break away from whatever he's doing in whichever town building he's working in. So you've got, between myself and Steve as first responders, the availability. Between us, for the year, we've got 130 calls that we've assisted on, that were on the EMS run sheet for. Not having us there, and to bring in an outside first responder that is getting paid by the hour because they're on the ambulance, it's the normal way they get compensated. It's $3,000 to start to cover those calls. If no first responder responds to assist Mike and he's by himself, excuse me, that call goes to mutual aid. Mutual aid from Springfield, Ludlow, Golden Cross, that's pretty much it. There's not a lot to choose from. We get charged $500. The town itself gets charged for asking for help because we can't cover our own call. Granted, on that, let's just say 10 of those calls be $5,000. That comes out of the town just for coverage on the ambulance that we couldn't cover. If you took 100 of those calls that Steve and I did instead of the 130, you're at $50,000 the town's paying just to have another ambulance come in. And our calls are up in last year they were 500 and something. So just the math can go up there if we're not covering the calls. And these days to get people to come in and help out and work, it's a tough thing on both sides. If all the calls weren't covered by the two people working this year, it's a $65,000 cost to the town. You would have paid $65,000 to these other agencies to cover the calls that wouldn't have been covered with a second person. Not saying that if Steve or I didn't cover it, somebody else wouldn't have come in. There's no way to predict whether, but it just gives you an idea. That's a lot of money sitting there. We've covered that, and it's covered Monday through Friday, guaranteed, and on the weekends. Actually, on the weekends now with the full-time second person, it's covered there too during the daytime. So we've just taken a huge chunk of that what if, and oh man, we're going to be spending some money if we can't cover that. We took that right out of there. So that's where we're at with all that. Under the police department, we're looking to start a CERT team.
I think that's, I'm going to cut you off. That's going to come in under the other program.
Oh, they want to
Under
talk
the
about
other
it?
agenda item. This is not all lumped together.
I'll give this section to them to give to you. The Emergency Operations Center.
That's
We
going to come in at, Tom, you're mixing agenda items. This is just the budget. This is just the budget.
That's going to be the flood update.
That's going to be the flood
discuss
update. This is
emergency
just
response.
budget.
Be held accountable, I had no
So you have to stick around a little longer.
I'm sitting here going,
All right,
so don't tell me you have any supervision.
that's all I have.
And I'm not going to cut the chief off, so, you know.
I will.
Don't push, Julie.
What was the piece you got?
I want you
Well-
guys to hear from ambulance and fire as well.
Yeah,
So we've got
and the thing
to
is,
spend an
just
hour.
save any questions that we have, or unless you have something you want to ask for right now. If not, we'll hear an update from all the department heads, and then we could ask questions at the end, or however. Matt? Or,
I was going to pass the EMS stuff to him to get that out of the way since it followed this.
I don't know.
His is much shorter than mine.
Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Mike Ranzio. So I'm going to keep this a little shorter than Tom's. We'll try. I haven't quite gotten his skill at talking yet. So up to date, we're about 396 calls. I think we'll be pretty close to last year's call volume. A lot of it is kind of mirroring what Thomas talked about. We've really looked at how do we build the department, how do we improve, and kind of looking into the future. Some of that is the community health and engaging in the community. I've always viewed the ambulance like people know it's there, we have one, but what do they really do? We don't know. It's a common problem for EMS. But I'm trying to bring us into the forefront so people actually see the faces, they know the providers, they see what we do. And so that was part of starting training and doing training for the community. So we trained about 33 people in Stop the Bleed this year. It's a relatively low number, but when it counts, it counts. And
It's a brand-new program.
that is true, yeah. Actually, pretty much everything I'll talk about is brand new. Just like having an instructor in the station. We can now instruct CPR, first aid, AED, Stop the Bleed, a whole list. All the way up to the advanced EMT level, we can do in-house. So for instance, the advanced EMT class is $2,000, where we're not paying an outside agency, and we can do in-house. So we can save up pretty fast. Did some math earlier, and we've saved about $3,000 just by doing in-house training. When I held the first responder course for the PD, the charge for that is about $100. That includes the time to actually train, as well as their CPR certification. We had 3 individuals from outside that came and paid the $100. Our internal members, the PD and the ambulance personnel, we didn't charge ourselves $100. So the neat part about that is just having 3 external people actually covered the cost of our own individuals getting their CPR card and brought in some revenue. I mean, not a whole lot, but it's kind of nice to see. And if we do an EMT class that's $1,500, you kind of can see where this goes. So we continue to bring on new members. We actually have some old members that are returning. They're excited to see the changes. Very similar to the PD, we have a new patch. We've been setting new expectations and kind of refreshing policies. As far as I know, this is the first year that we actually have an award policy. So during our end of the year get-together, we'll be presenting awards to some of our members. Steve was special enough, he got a state one.
Yeah.
We talked earlier this year, we kind of increased the ambulance rates, which is great. Part of that is there's the BLS, the basic life support and advanced life support calls. Up until, I can't remember now if it's June or July, I was a basic, now I'm an advanced. So looking at last year's calls, the comparison. So last year we had about 16% that are ALS, and that was for the full year. Up to date today, we're at 22% of ALS calls, which really what that comes down to is that we bill at a higher level as well as provide a high level of care to our patients. And, kind of mirroring what Tom said, we were kind of given a task to think outside of the box. Our new chassis for the ambulance arrived last week after a long wait, so maybe next year we'll see an ambulance. fingers crossed. And that kind of sparked an idea. What do we do with our old one? You know, if you talk to any leadership in EMS, they will tell you that 911 calls, you don't make any money. But if you look at transfers, interfacility transfers, you know, going from Springfield Hospital to Dartmouth, that's where you can generate revenue. And, you know, I did some math, and theoretically, if we did 100 transfers out of Springfield Hospital to Dartmouth, we could pay for 2 salaries and more. That's a lot of factors to still be kind of worked out, but we're kind of just throwing the idea around. What if? You know, I heard some information this past weekend that Ludlow is taking on another town with only 2 ambulances. So what is that going to look for us? Are we going to Ludlow more often now, especially during the ski season? We do have our mutual aid agreements in place, so if we do go there and they are not able to staff their own ambulances, they are being billed for that. But it kind of just sparks the ideas. How do we, you know, build kind of resilience within our own department and contingencies? Right now, if our ambulance goes out, we're still getting billed when Springfield comes or if Ludlow comes to take that call. But if we had 2, then the primary ambulance goes out, you have a backup. You know, it's of any of that equipment that we have, you know, it's fairly expensive, and when it goes out, that's not a bill that we just want out of the blue. Anyway, just kind of a thought out there. We do have Kate Martin starting full-time, or started at the beginning of the month. Well, I guess it is a new month. Anyway, she's been great. It's been helping a lot. It's a lot easier now to kind of get coverage. We're asking now just for 1 part-time person to come from home instead of 2. And she's been great in kind of facilitating some things around the station. And she's also going to be our next level into the community health. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we're going to start doing those visits to the senior circle, which I know they are very excited about because I got stuck there for an hour talking to them last week. But that news is spreading by itself. We've had now 3 individuals that we've helped between walkers, Life Alert. I have spoken to another family member that is concerned about their family member coming home and how can we assist them there. Currently, it's not generating revenue, but it's part of that community outreach and helping our community members. When we did it with our last person, there was a lot of comments on Facebook, and it kind of stuck with me. Neighbors helping neighbors. And that's what I kind of think we're doing. I don't know where I was going, but I'll just leave it there.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
We got to shift the mic over to Matthew. Chief Wilson, I should say. I don't. Just talk close to it.
Okay.
Wake
So, fire department continues to get busier and busier. This year was no exception. We're going up anywhere from 10 to 20% on call volume every single year. To give you a quick snapshot of it, I've been chief for 10 years now. When I took over as chief 10 years ago, we ran 72 calls a year. Last year, we ran 255 calls, and we're already at 255 calls this year with 2 months left in the year. This year is a much greater jump because last year, the fire department, during the rebuilding phase of the ambulance, we ran quite a few ambulance calls assisting them. This year, I think maybe 10 the entire year. So our numbers are pretty much strictly fire department numbers. It just keeps getting busier and busier. Types of calls we're responding to are changing. We're responding to a lot more rescue calls. Even outside the flood, we're starting to be utilized for that more. I don't know if more people are hiking and doing stuff, but that type of call has gone up. It hasn't gone up like drastically, but they are going up. During the flood, we did over 50 rescues. That's not including animal rescues. I think it was 27 animal rescues we did on top of the human life-saving rescues as well. It was definitely a busy week and really a busy 36 hours. Most of those rescues came in that first 36 hours. Out of those 50-something rescue calls, I think 7 or 8 of them were in another town. We do have an MOU with the state. The state utilizes Chester as a state resource for our rescue team. So we spent time in Ludlow, Proctorsville, Cavendish, and then we were deployed to Putney. We were in Ludlow at that point in time, but as we came back into Chester, we called the state back and said, yeah, you need to find someone else to go to Putney because Chester's not going to be okay much longer. And within 45 minutes, we were underwater. So busy days. As far as budgetary items, you'll see some increases in there, salary increases because of our call volumes that are constantly going up, and annual pay raises. Training, we've only raised a little bit, and one of the reasons for that is we are doing more and more training. Some stuff just to stay proficient, some to get better, some mandated by the state that we have to do. The amount of money that the Yosemite Engine Company, our nonprofit, gives us towards training, we're actually spending over $20,000 a year in training. They have actually broke it down and actually have their own line item now for training to support the fire department, which is $12,000 a year now that they're giving us for training, which is a huge offset. One of the other big things they did for us under our equipment budget, Julie and I know at least one year, maybe 2, we're missing a vital tool that we need as for our rescue operations. It's called a Vortex. I won't get into what it does. It's a specialized piece of equipment that costs $6,000. We've tried to get grants for it, was denied on it. We had a call shortly before the flood that we desperately needed that tool. We made it work without it. Then the flood happened, we desperately needed it again, and so the engine company ended up buying that for us. So that was a $6,000 piece of equipment that we now have that the engine company ended up footing the bill for us on, so we now have that. So we appreciate their continued support. Not a lot of other changes that are in here, with the exception of, you will see in like Joey said, she'll be presenting it to you later, but just to give you a heads up, we'll have 3 items that we're requesting as part of the capital plan. One is the replacement of our utility that was supposed to be replaced after 10 years. We are now 12 years into it. We held off for a couple of years to wait for the bond on the building to come around to, I'll say, affordable drop.
Getting used to it.
Getting used to it. So it is time to replace that now for many reasons. One, it's 2 years overdue. 2, the truck is not the truck that should have been bought and is not powerful enough to pull our trailers that we need to pull. How we still have a transmission or a motor left in that truck is beyond me, but that's coming. And the other thing that would be coming with that, which almost every department is doing now, kind of going back to you guys' housing stuff you were talking about, the truck will also have an optional plow on it as well. The amount of residents that we respond to that are seasonal in the middle of the night that we get there and cannot get to. We are not going out plowing people's driveways. It literally is blowing a path in that our truck to get in and we leave. We're not cleaning things up. The other thing in that, evaluating the department and town needs that we have, a lot of places used to rely, like we did for our rescue services before we started providing our own, was the state resources on different rescue stuff. We're attempting to expand our rescue capabilities into confined space stuff. We have a pretty massive sewer system here in this town, and we have no way of taking care of our own people if something is to go wrong there. And when you call a state resource, for that, they are activated from the north, and you were talking 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 hours before you get people here to help. We've already sent 2 people off to get trained in it. We hope to send 2 more people off. So that would be another capital thing you can see in there where I'm trying to put together, it's a specialized air pack that you have to wear for that. And my hope is that for the next 3 years, we can buy 2 each year to get us to where we need to be. The last thing in there, which Julie and I had talked about on Tuesday, I don't know whether it will stay in the capital or potentially go into the equipment budget, is revamping our rescue truck. The rescue truck is the money pit. Most of the time, I spend most of our vehicle maintenance within the first 2 months of the year on that truck. It just kills me every single year. One of the problems with that truck is when it was designed, the concept of that truck was great. It was supposed to be not just a rescue, but kind of a multi-purpose truck. The truck is too heavy. It has way, way too much stuff on it. And the stuff that were put on it to make it a multi-use truck I don't even remember the year of the truck now. It's at least 15, 16 years old now. The pump that's in the back of it and the tank that's in the back of it, which holds 300 gallons, has been used one time. So our attempt to hopefully make the truck a better truck and be able to keep it in life longer is to remove that equipment that does not get used and replace it with slide-out trays in the back that we can just put our lighter rescue equipment on and not have to deal with that. And hopefully we won't be replacing brakes and springs and fuel lines and everything else on that truck as often as we are every single year. That's really all I have, unless you guys have questions for me. Happy to answer them.
I guess that's the final report from the chiefs. And if there's any questions regarding the budgets or any things that the chiefs have talked to us about, now would be the time. If anybody on the board has any questions or comments?
All right. First off, I think you're doing a fabulous job. I love the concept. All the things, when I look at police revenues, a lot of things that you talk about aren't in there. You know, your revenue package for, your revenues for this year, this is evil. I don't like, you know, it's really down from what they were last year, is what you're showing us. Even if I take it at this is a quarter, this is 3/4, right? So.
3/4.
What are you saying, Peter? I didn't understand a word of
Okay,
that.
so if you took the 2023 actuals, if
Yep.
I just look at that as it's 3/4,
Yep,
okay, that should be $80,000. If I took what was actual in 2002 and had it down.
well, can I explain the reasoning for that? It's because of your PD.
Yeah, because it looks like we had better revenues in 2002 than we're expecting in 2004.
No. So your 2022 revenue of police, PD, other services
Mm-hmm.
is when our guys do special detail.
No, just total. All I want to do is.
Well, you need to look at the detail for what's feeding your total.
Yep.
So in 2022, your PD services other of 81,416
Mm-hmm.
is what's throwing your number. That's because in 2022, the PD did special detail. If you then go to the PD expense line for 2022, payroll, you're going to see that other services was expended of $62,520. Whereas you don't have that expense in '23, you also don't have the revenue in '23.
Also don't have the
So they're not underspent,
They're
or they're
not.
not under revenue.
Under revenue.
That's your difference. That's where that's coming from.
Well, yeah, but even so, I mean, we're not looking for a separate line in the book. But obviously, Tom, you're talking about generating revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more revenue than I'm currently seeing.
Right, and that's got to.
You get the mic.
That revenue has to catch up with itself. The court system, which involves the traffic bureau.
Yep.
Which is the traffic portion of that.
Right.
Everything was backed up from COVID on. They are way behind even
Well,
on.
so that should be able to be projected into 2024, right?
To a point, but if you wanted to go back in there and say, out of all the percentage
Yep.
of tickets that are written, how many of those are
Oh,
going to
no, I
contest
see,
it? How
because
many of
you-
those are going to lose it and have to pay? Or how many are going to win it and not have to pay?
No, but you're talking the state paying core program, right? Is that in this budget? You know, when you talk about doing, being able to fund a 6th officer, and you could do it through core, then if that's what you're projecting you're going to do, then I should be able to see in the budget that you projected that income.
That's
right?
going to, that is going to be a board decision to decide if you're going to increase that line.
Increase that line,
Which
all right.
you
And
don't,
how
the
it's
problem is
financed,
you don't have a trend yet, Peter,
have a
to
trend,
show
all right.
you. So you don't want, what you don't want to do is increase that revenue to 50 or 60,000 and then find that you only collect 35 or 40.
Oh, no.
So I am the one who does the budget with the guy's input, so you can direct that question to me, not Tom, but he's not going to know the answer. But the court fee, I left it 30. This is a
Yep.
discussion, obviously, for the
Yep.
select board to decide if you want to take that risk
Yep.
and up that line, knowing that there's no trend to show if you're going to meet that line.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Okay.
So that would we've played this game in the years past.
We've had this discussion on court fees, and
yeah.
they're never consistent, they're
Yeah.
never predictable, no matter what the tickets are, and no matter how it comes back. We've gotten bitten before by increasing that amount, which is why it's kept where it is. And that's one of the hardest revenues to try to determine is the court fees that come back to the town through all the tickets.
But knowing that there is stuff that Tom is looking at bringing in, I mean, maybe this is the year that you up it to 40,000, but there's nothing logical to come up with. Like, there's no math you can do to say,
Yep.
well, it should be raised to 60. There's nothing to
No
support that.
correlation between, here's what we wrote for tickets, here's what we're getting back exactly. It's
Yep.
just an unknown.
just don't have a
Half those tickets get thrown out, sometimes they get added on, but sometimes you lose them, sometimes there's nothing with it, so it's kind of hard. What I got from the conversations that I heard is that though there is some extra revenue streams coming in from these different areas, their biggest concern is the safety of the town. And that's what they're working on, and the fact that there might be some revenue benefits because of some of their actions.
Yep.
Their actions are driven by the safety of the towns and the people. And of course, there might be
I
some,
have no question. I think the model that Julie and Tom have that the chiefs have come up to is just, it's out of this world compared to what's locked down in the world. Okay? But it'd be
Agreed.
really good to figure out how to pay for it.
I know.
Trick question.
And Peter, as we get further into the budget discussion, like as the whole budget starts to come together into pieces, I mean, that is certainly a line we can look at to
Yep.
say, and especially as you get to the end of the year, if that court fee revenue line in the last quarter,
Yep.
because a lot of this didn't start until April.
It's
Right? So the fourth quarter
Yep.
may really jump this, and then we can start saying, okay, here's some consistency, quarter to quarter to quarter.
Yep.
Now, we don't have year to year, but we do have quarter to
Yep.
quarter to
Yep.
quarter. Maybe we can make a more reasonable estimate as to say, to your point, Peter,
Okay.
you know, maybe we
Well,
should
okay,
increase these
so
lines.
let's just put it this way. Gentlemen, I appears to have misunderstood the budget item, and really, I should be picking on Julie.
That's exactly right.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm
I
sorry.
will throw myself out there.
I guess, throw in my 2 cents, I'd rather be surprised in a good way than a bad way.
On the revenue line, yeah.
Relative to that particular line item. So the thing that I got from what you guys are doing is you're looking for ways to get somebody else to pay for it or to save money. And so the grants and, you know, changing things around to make it work for us without spending a bunch of money, really appreciate that. And I think that's going to have a huge impact, not only on the bottom line, but also on the, more importantly, the community view of public safety and what you guys are doing and their well-being, both perceived and real. So I appreciate what you're doing.
And we will watch the revenue lines, Peter.
well, our job is the revenue lines,
father.
that's
It's
part of
my
it.
own
You're
fault.
fine, you're all good, I wanted you to understand that.
I'm really impressed with the fact of the cross-training, and I'm sure that's not mandatory, but the fact that everybody is embracing that and that you're able to cross-train through all the departments, which probably saves us a huge amount of money and increases the response times immensely. And those 2 things alone, when you could save money and increase your response time, that's a huge plus. And I just want to thank all the first responders that are involved in this, in the organization of public safety, because that's what it is. It's all underneath one roof. And for the job that you guys do and stuff. And the fact that you're always looking for ways, thinking outside the box. You're always looking for ways of getting revenue without that being the main objective. and the safety of the people of the town. So it's commendable what's going on and the changes that I see happening and stuff in all the departments in the town, and it's well appreciated, for sure.
I just have one more question. This is aimed at Julie.
Fire away.
We have a new public safety building, and it has a police department in it, but there's still a sign out front that says police department. Are we getting any confusion because of that?
A what?
I missed that.
There's a sign out front of this building that says police department.
Oh,
Sorry,
I'm like, what? There should be a sign that says police
Yeah, yeah,
department. What do you
yeah.
mean? Oh, the ugly
Yeah,
green
on the
signs
front
on
of-
the front of the
on the
building.
front of this
Yeah,
building.
they're faded and horrible anyway, so probably, we should take them down. No, most people, we have very few people come and
Okay.
say, can I talk to the PD? Most people know it's over there now. But, yeah, good point. We should probably take those
Biggest
down.
issue with that right now is if you look on Google, Google refuses to change the address.
Oh, really?
That's in process right now. Actually, Alicia is battling with them.
Which is funny, because we don't have a lot of people come here for PD anymore.
But a lot of stuff, if people are coming, usually unannounced, they end up here, and then they keep calling and calling and calling, where are the cops? Where are they?
Right.
We're in a different building. So it's got to be changed, because when you Google the address, it doesn't come back to the new PD, it comes back here, and we can't get Google to change that. We're working on it, but
Yeah.
It seems like that building has been a huge catalyst for positive change in
Oh,
this
yes.
town in so many ways, because it's really done a lot for what's going on.
If I can throw out one thing that I forgot to mention during my.
Can you just spin
Microphone.
that closer, Tim, just so if it's
Otherwise,
direct?
they don't hear us on.
I don't know if you guys have heard any of the grumblings or not. It's a lot more work for me, and I'm hoping it's coming to an end. But there's some sort of snafu with ISO and insurance companies.
I heard from one person.
And ISO is blaming the insurance companies, and the insurance companies are blaming ISO. Neither one will fix the problem, but I am generating anywhere from 5 to 10 reports a week, because when the insurance company, everyone's renewing their homeowner's insurance right now, and everybody's homeowner's insurance has skyrocketed, in some cases tripled, quadrupled, because they live, one of them, who is 2 houses down from the fire department, being reported that they live more than 5 miles away from the fire department. Neither companies will fix it. So every single time this happens, I have to generate a report with GPS coordinates, where the hydrants are, what we have for staffing, what we have for equipment, and send that off to the insurance companies. They then lower the people's homeowners insurance again. So if you hear any grumblings, we've tried to fix the problem. The 2 companies or 2 agencies that can fix it are just blaming each other. So our only option of fixing it now is me to continue to write these letters to help the citizens out. So if you hear anything, it's not us, it's them, but we're providing a way to make sure their homeowners insurance stays where it should be.
Thanks. Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you all for taking the time out of
They're
your
going to be there
lives.
for the next item.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, you're not getting out of that.
See you in a minute.
That's right.
Hearing no further questions on the general fund budget, public safety, we're going to go on to our flood update. And before we get into the discussing with the emergency response initiatives, maybe I can cover this under the flood response survey that
Yes.
Frank Kelly had.
Yes.
And Frank, are you here to speak to that issue, or? Yeah, I can. Come on up to the mic, and then we'll get to the rest of it. And this is Frank Kelly, and he's here to share some flood response survey information.
Just talk generally around it, and they'll pick you up, Frank.
Talk
You don't-
generally around the topic.
You don't have to like get down into it. You can just,
Thank you. I'm Frank Kelly. I am part of the Citizen Advisory Committee. Thank you for that endorsement, Chief Williams, for the work that we've been doing. The group is coming together in regards to the question. We're working on a survey where a community member, once we get websites available, where there would be a Google Doc that someone could click on to provide information to the Citizen Advisory Committee. It's not ready to go live yet, but we're getting there. We're trying to get caught up with all the different things. What we have done is we put together a flood response survey that we want to share a draft with you now, with then the idea being that we would go live with this fairly soon. We've tried, I don't know, wherever the camera is, we've tried to make it easy to look at. So it's going to be very brief, but then it has a QR code that people can just scan with their phone. Brings you to a series of questions about what was your response to where do you live in the community, general demographic information, and then what information did you provide to emergency services? What information did you get? Was it what you wanted to get? So that way we can get feedback from the community as to what happened and kind of get some more information. So the next time all the chiefs come together to prepare for something like the table talk discussion, I believe is what it was called, then they have more information. In addition to that, there was a suggestion made that we put in a few things. It's kind of like a backdoor way of prompting people to have good safety plans in place. It's like, check off which of the following things you have. Do you have 72 hours worth of water? You know, do you have heat? Do you have wood? Do you have extra this, extra batteries, extra radios, extra, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we finished up with a question as to whether or not community members would like to participate in a forum to like officially debrief the flood experience that they had. Knowing full well that people over in the western part of Chester had a different experience than people in eastern Chester, people up off of Smoke Shield in different places. So that's the intent. If anyone wants to use their phone and take a look at the draft, you're welcome to.
I will email you guys the link.
Yeah. Yep.
Might
So
be
that
easier.
That's available. If there's any community members that would like a copy. We did establish a Gmail account for the Citizens Advisory Committee so that it's accessible by myself, by Chief Williams, and by Alicia, and by Julie. I think Alicia's on it. If not, she will be.
I'm on it.
So that way then people have a way to communicate with us digitally. And that's what we've been able to do.
And you guys are actually going to be at the next meeting.
Correct.
You guys are they're at the November 15th meeting doing a full presentation to you on the things that they're working on and the things that they have coming up. And then was that the meeting you were going to release this at? I think so
Yeah, we
too.
wanted at least you folks and the department heads to have a chance to look at it first because it has your names on it.
Yeah, I'll send you guys the link.
All right,
to
great.
see it.
So Frank, just take 2 steps forward and hold up. Got it, thank you. I got it.
Oh,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Mind you, it took me about a day and a half to get it to work. But it comes up directly right off of your phone, so that then people can have that. So that's what we've been working on with the survey. We look forward to coming and visiting in 2 weeks.
Nice.
Thanks, Frank.
Anything I missed, anything else?
I don't think so. I think the rest we'll probably cover next meeting,
Okay.
but
Yeah, and if you
perfect.
Have
That's
any
perfect.
questions, by all means, reach out. We're available. And I'm turning it back over to you.
Great.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
So it's a flood update to discuss emergency response initiatives. And I guess this is going to involve the chiefs again?
This will involve the chiefs again. So we have been doing a fair amount of work, and I have had our own quote-unquote tabletop, because I'm learning that it's not really a tabletop, that has an official meaning. But anyway, we all got around a big table and talked, and we're talking about things that went well, things that maybe not so well, comparisons between Irene and this event, and all of that. And identified some things that we always, right, know that we need to improve on. One of the big ones for me was how we communicate with the public. Really, for me, seemed to be a big issue this time. And for me and the admin part, these guys did amazing and they flowed beautifully. I didn't flow so well. So, they are teaching me about what my role should be in a response, and I'm learning what my role is supposed to be. So a lot of good things have come out, and of course, that was Alicia's first day on the job, which was wonderful for us, not so much for her. Alicia has a background in emergency management, so great ad for us. And so Alicia's doing a fair amount of work on advising on some of the things that we can be doing. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to them, and they can kind of talk about some of those different initiatives. Alicia probably could do a lot of explanation about the things that we're looking at, some improvements that we're looking to make going forward in preparation for the next type of event that will come at some point.
And there will
And
be
it will
another-
be, it will
The
come.
100-year floods are here.
And it's not even floods. I mean, look at this past winter. We had 3 days of no power. Like, that's huge. I mean, that, you know, that was just as bad almost as a flood, not to infrastructure, but certainly to our,
people's
to
lives.
people's lives. So, yeah, go ahead, Alicia, I'll shut up.
So Alicia DePietro, admin assistant. I was actually going to mention that. So you had the flooding most recently. That was my first day on the first full week, which I actually loved. Not the disaster part, but to see how well Chester works together. You've had 2 100-year storms within 12 years. You've gone through a pandemic. You've had a multi-day power outage due to, you know, winter storms with accessibility issues for power companies, as well as other things. The frequency of events like this are occurring more and more in Chester and Vermont, in the country, really. So when we discussed the most recent one with our faux tabletop, our debriefing after the flooding, communication was definitely one of the things that was brought up, as well as kind of our resource management and how to improve that. So just a couple things to bring up that you have to track during an event like this. You're tracking all of your calls for service, which Chief Wilson mentioned there was 50, which means there was more than that if you include the PD and EMS. And not only the location, but the number of people who are involved in it. You know, if there's trees down, power lines down, if Green Mountain Power has been contacted, what's their possible ETA on it? Road closures, which we're developing within minutes. They would be on scene on dry ground when they were doing, you know, rescues. They had trucks that their tires were starting to be underwater at least a few inches. It happened quick once it started. I can't remember which agency it was, but they recorded that there was a 3-inch rise within an hour. So when things happen like this, you have a lot of information and a lot of resources and a lot of departments that you have to coordinate all at once. And that's kind of where the Emergency Operations Center idea, which has already really been in place, but we're just kind of trying to fine-tune it. Calls came into the fire department directly. I was on the phone. You had one phone and one person taking every call that came in. So you can imagine, you have 3,000 residents, you get more than one call at once. So we realized that we really need to move where it is now, which is in the bay of the fire department, into an area that you can incorporate more people, more phones, more technology to be able to track these resources and to manage these events like this. So an idea that we've come up with through the departments and through meetings and ideas is to take the already established training room in the public safety building and add pieces and parts to really create this Emergency Operations Center, which you'll probably hear us reference as an EOC. And what you're going to do with that is take what is already there and add things that, you know, common things like your equipment, your maybe laptops to have your people, your phone trees. We're going to increase our radio applications so that in that room you can actually reach out to your emergency partners, whether it's fire, EMS, or PD, which does create some infrastructure things. Like we talked to Burlington Communication as far as looking into either increased antenna or a possible tower on the building so that there's redundancy in your system. If you guys lose your radio tower, because of where it is, not only will you lose, will EMS and all your public safety not be able to speak to dispatch, they can't speak to each other. So now you not only have your first responders in danger, but that puts the entire town in danger. So we're really trying to get redundancy into the system and be able to coordinate efforts between all of the departments and departments outside of town. You've heard mutual aid mentioned. And so that's really the heart of this Emergency Operations Center. And there is ways to fund it. There's always grants that we've been looking into. We have a couple on the works that aren't open yet, but we do all the research and we have everything ready for when those become available so that we can have it out as soon as possible.
And under this model, I'll just add real quick, under this model, one of the things that I learned during this event that made us over here feel really frazzled was really during an event, me and Debbie and Amy pack up and go there so that we are under one roof. And everything is being funneled through one place. So that is a big change, and one of the reasons to need a little more space over there to kind of do some of this. So go ahead.
Yes, so that's actually a great point. So we had talked about getting the information out to the public, getting information out to each other. There's what's called a public information officer. And we talked about Amy would be trained in not only how to communicate, what to communicate, and where to communicate. So that leads me into there's a couple of programs out there. Some are free to the town, some would have some expense, but they're alert systems. So you might have heard them referred to as reverse 911. And instead of town members calling in to say that there's an emergency, we can actually push out a message to say, this is happening, you know, this is the plan, this is what to expect. And it creates a registry of people in town. That kind of further led us into, there's what's called CARE, which is the Community Assistance Registry for Emergencies, for special populations who say there's an evacuation or a multi-day event where there's no power. It's a registry so we know who needs what and where they are. Do you need oxygen if it goes more than 24 hours without power? If it's an evacuation, do you need assistance because you're not mobile? And so we can, if we can get the information on who needs what, we can then properly plan on, do we need to have partnerships with bus transportations, or what do we need and how do we achieve it? And we do that pre-emergency. And so these kind of emergency plans in place prior is how we can have a better emergency plan for the town and adapt going forward. And we will always learn from every event, you know, and just get better each time. One of the things that became a big safety concern was that we found out the highway department radios could not reach out to the other departments, nor could we reach them. So they were obviously in the areas that were the highest risk because there was flooding, washouts. There were parts of roads that they couldn't get to town, and then they were in parts that they couldn't get back. I believe, Chief Wilson, was it I can't remember if it was the engine or there was a piece of equipment
That was locked.
that was on the other side of a now river that was a road. And we had to wait until the waters dissipated till we could get them back. So that communication piece is a huge safety factor that we want to make sure we have ready and in the works. We also found that because of the scope of this flooding, there was a lot of road closures and whatnot that we didn't have enough signage and enough people to block the roads on both ends. We, you know, tracked where cones were, but 100 cones, I think, went out, and we still had places that weren't marked as well as we wanted to. So we discussed the option of a CERT, which is a community emergency response team. They're not law enforcement, but they are citizens who volunteer, who get special training, ongoing training, who become part of the public safety factor. And they can do things like put out signage. They can help with traffic control. And it's not just for emergencies. This actually will go beyond if you have a town event. You have the Fall Festival. They can help with parking. They'll get proper, you know, badge, no carrying a gun. They'll be vested properly, but they're involved in the community. They help out in the events, and it's used beyond just the emergency, and it's in your day-to-day operations. Another is beyond CERT. had training that we discussed as far as how to make improvements going forward. We're actually going to a conference tomorrow. I was trying to find the specific name on it, but it was essentially planning for underserved populations, which is where that emergency registry comes into play, as well as that reverse 911. Chief, I know I'm forgetting things. What else did you want me to know?
Well, another big thing that we talked about too was the emergency shelters, warming shelters. That has been, I don't know if one of you wants to address that, but what we have found is our locations, first of all, we don't really have any designated appropriately. But second of all, we always kind of default to the high school, and this is the second or third event where the town is locked off from the high school because of flooding. So it's of no help. So in a, right.
In that event, like I said, we, just fire department alone, take the police calls out of it, ambulance calls out of
Yeah.
it. We ran over 50 calls in that point in time. Just think of the chaos and the vehicles that are going in and out of there. We can't have the public
No.
there during an event like that. One, we don't have enough room to house our own people
Right.
during that event, let alone the public safety. Is someone going to get hit by a car? You know, if kids and stuff like that, you're not going to keep an eye on them at all time. We're going to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
And we don't have enough room for our own people. Our kitchen's not big enough to feed the entire town. You know, it was challenging enough feeding all of our own staff. I mean, you know, I have 24 of my own. He's got 10. I can't remember how many were there for the ambulance, but, you know, we had at least 40 of our own staff that were in the building. So in south of town is a problem area. The Mountain View Marshall Road area goes underwater, and the high school just is not. It seems like it would be great. Because it's high and dry or whatever, but the problem is yeah, we may get, and we had this happen during the event. People got put into the high school, and then the road went under. Well, what happens when that person you just put in the high school has a heart attack, right? Let's not think about just the flooding. If we put them somewhere that we now can't get to them to help them if another emergency happens, then we've secluded them from everything. So we need to recognize the areas that we have in town that aren't our problem areas and come up with different ideas and different ways to have shelters.
And we've talked about not just necessarily having one shelter. You know, maybe there is a primary shelter, but having other locations. Maybe there's relationships that are developed with the churches that are in the center of town. Maybe there are just locations throughout town, and forming those relationships. This also comes back to one of the big things that we have learned during all of our ARPA meetings was the desire for community center down at, and I've talked to you guys about this before, community center down at the Pinnacle. It is a good location to have something like that, and with the grant funding potentially for a community center, well, you access grant funds and also make it your emergency shelter, and you're building from scratch, put those components in that are necessary. And so there's a lot of discussions, and you guys take it from there, but there's been a lot of discussions about emergency shelters, which is a big discussion that we really need to start having at a serious level.
It's been going on
Yeah.
for a long time, and we really haven't come up with
No,
any.
we need to start having serious
There
discussions about it.
there should be two or three locations, and that doesn't mean that every event you're opening all three. Maybe, you know, this one is the one you activate for this, but it's this other one, you know, for this other different event, or you have the flood and you're
All of them,
activating all three. I think it would be nice to have at least two options. A third would be great, and then we make the decision as emergency management during that time of which ones need to be opened.
Was there more to add to that?
I'm going to get my 2 cents in here.
Under an hour.
Yes.
I'm just kidding, Tom.
only have a
I'm just
couple
kidding,
left.
Chief.
I only have
Just kidding, Chief.
All right.
An hour, huh?
On that CERT team, a couple of the other things that come up with that is it'll be used by Chester Public Safety as a whole. It's not just going to be under the PD and used for the PD. It'll be used as a combination. Whoever needs it within there or which part of the Department of Public Safety needs it, that's where those people will be used. Also, as part of this community plan, as far as the health and checking on the vulnerable adults and stuff, the CERT team can be used for that too, where we have the fire department committed to water rescue operations during the last incident, the PD going to those and going to other things, alarm activations, because all the storms setting off, everything that's under the sun basically for us. The ambulance is running call to call to call because you don't know which one you're going to need EMS at. We didn't have time to go to every location and set up cones, set up roadblocks, set up signs. We just don't have the manpower for that. You can't ask Highway to do it, which I should add in there. They are part of our team also. They're not an emergency service like that, but we utilize them during those incidents. They become part of our department. They fall under that umbrella, just like Green Mountain Power will too, under big storms, because we're using them all the time. We're working with them all the time. They then become part of our resource and part of our system, basically, within public safety. But the CERT team would be going out and looking at in a safe manner to where they can get to, let's say the power's out and we have 15 people out on Smokeshare Road that say, hey, we're in the middle of nowhere, could somebody please come just check on us? That's all we need, is just somebody to check. We would send the CERT team out. Roadways washed out, they stop there, they report back to the emergency services. We then send the next level group out. Maybe it takes a water rescue team to get across a washed out area or something. We just keep upping it like that. But now we've got the civilian resources to go out and take care of some of these other issues that are out there. They supplement the Department of Public Safety. That was one thing I just wanted to get across. Unfortunately, the grants for CERT teams themselves have dried up, but there are a lot of grants for safety items or equipment items, and we kind of piece it together, but it would be doing it through multiple grants, which we're looking at. But there are other ways to fund that too. That team would be volunteer. So there shouldn't be a cost to that, but there'll be a cost to the training portion of it, and obviously having them in a recognizable uniform of some sort so that they're different from everybody else, different from the PD look, different from the fire look. They would have their own identity, basically. The Emergency Operations Center, I just wanted to reiterate, it cannot be a shelter. It can't be a warming shelter. It doesn't fall under FEMA standard for a shelter, the building. There's nothing in town that does, actually, right now for the, quote, shelter. When the emergency happens, we do what we have to do to get by. That's what we've been doing. That's what we have done. But we really need to take that next step and come up with specific areas that are warming shelters that have the availability of bathrooms, food, or potential to make food, so on and so forth. And we have multiple, so we aren't cut off from stuff. When we have flooding, we know areas, the middle of the village here it was an island. You weren't going anywhere for quite some time until the water receded. In fact, the emergency services building was totally surrounded at one point. You couldn't get past the railroad tracks on 11. Right at the intersection with Jiffy Mart, that was cut off. I mean, I'm missing a couple areas there, but we were pretty much stuck. We had a fire call out on Gould Road where we pretty much took our chances and took every back way that we could. The roads that we were using were basically half of what was there. And they had about a, 6-foot drop off on some of those washouts. Driving fire trucks and an ambulance and police cars to a structure fire call on the opposite end of town, because of course, where else would it come in at that point when you can't get anywhere? And including Springfield, is our mutual aid coming in, had to go way up and around through Baltimore to get to this location too, because the roads just weren't available. It's planning for all these things ahead of time. And if we have those resources out there, if we have these centers out there that we can deter people to, that makes sense, especially when we're cut into pieces and we can't get to certain places in town, it makes sense. And we activate when we need it, wherever we need it. I think that's it.
So there'll be more coming. There'll be a fair amount more coming as these initiatives are being developed. And as the tools are getting put into place. But it seemed like an appropriate time to just start the conversation so that the community kind of knows that there is stuff being worked on. There were some areas that we identified are just an issue, that we didn't have tools that would have been really helpful, and now we know what we need. And so there will be more conversation like this as things start to develop, but just to kind of give you an overview of what's happening. A lot going on in that department.
Well, it seems like every storm we learn a little more. And the big issues that I get out of the conversation seems like communication was a huge one as far as how we could make things better in that. And then being prepared getting everything ready ahead of time. And a lot of that you learn every time there's a storm. What can we do better so we could prepare for the next one? And there's going to be a next one.
Absolutely.
And it's really encouraging that people are sitting down after it and analyzing it and having these conversations and trying to figure it out to see how we could do things better. And it's a lot of work, and it's going to probably involve some money. But we've had conversations about warming shelters in the past, too. And it's just, locations have been the tough ones. But maybe there's some buildings or organizations that we can identify or work with to have that in place before the next one, because that came up a lot in people's comments and concerns. Where do I go? Where do I go? I can't get to my home. I can't get up the street. I can't do this. And it's a big issue.
Well, it's a conversation that a lot of towns are having, because a lot of towns are in the same boat. They don't have an identified space to send people, which is.
That list of having a list of people that are for the oxygen or for the needy, that almost kind of dovetails to a list that you would have for the people that used to call a lot for an ambulance all the time, that always had issues and things. And it's the same type of list. Well, this person is this, he has a wheelchair, and that information probably works not only for a natural disaster, but in day-to-day activities when you keep getting the calls from the same person and stuff. So there's more information that's helpful.
Yeah, so it is handy, especially if you go on so many calls, that you kind of get an idea of who is at risk, who you may need to check on. And we did that during the flood. We had one individual on Cavadas that we knew that she was probably going to be panicking with what was going on. The CARES, it's kind of complicated and confusing, and I don't think, we push out information, the state does, but nobody really signs up for it. It's a list that we can receive, I believe, 24 hours?
72 hours prior to a known emergency.
Or during. But it would be nice to develop something within the town that is a little bit more accessible. We're not relying on the state to actually send it down. And be able to start even planning with those individuals ahead of time, making sure that they do have the appropriate amount of oxygen to hold them through for 72 hours, maybe their medication. That's, again, that kind of comes back to the whole community health thing that we've been trying to do. But yeah.
A lot of topics, and the storms are going to keep on coming, that's for sure.
And on the same note, as far as that reverse 911 type of information, Amy O'Brien and I have looked into various paid services, and just like public safety, how it benefits multi-departments, this actually, some of the programs will benefit not only public safety, but general town information that needs to go out. For example, there is a program, it is a paid-for program. We're trying to figure out funding on that aspect, but you can actually pull up mapping and highlight an area of town. You can actually physically draw on the map, and that specific location, any houses in that area, only that area will get the message. So if you have, water's going to be out because they're doing a flush of a hydrant, they will be notified 2 days before, and you won't get, this constant spam of all of town is notified, which kind of makes you blind to messages because, if you get too many. So there are definitely pieces and parts that have benefits, wider range than just emergency, aspects to it, so.
That's great. Any questions, comments?
Thank you.
Yep, thanks again for your time and your effort, and I appreciate the information. It was very helpful, enlightening. Thank you. Next.
You're allowed to go. You're dismissed.
You guys want to head up, go ahead. We're
You're
almost
welcome
done
to go.
anyway.
Goodbye, guys. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Just have a good barn dance, you know who everybody is.
That's right.
New business. Future agenda items. I think you had something on your list here.
Yeah, your next one's a little full. Hopefully, we're going to have the false alarm policy. Hopefully, the traffic ordinance will be done. The Citizen Advisory Committee will be doing their update. And then for budget, it's going to be admin, facilities, recreation.
Yep.
And then we'll add short-term rental.
Okay, so I would really like to see the capital fund completely filled out. because it's got some holes in it.
You would like to see the capital fund
Like the
completely?
tanker that you bought 2 years ago isn't in the capital fund.
No, because it's grant funded.
And part of it's grant funded and part of it's not.
All but
It was-
$30,000, and the $30,000 is in the capital fund. It's in the capital plan.
It's not in the capital plan that I have.
After the meeting, I will show you in your budget
Okay,
where it
there
is
you
in the
go.
capital plan. I'm happy to make a first pass at it.
Yep,
The problem is, a lot of those numbers I don't have yet.
right.
And our capital plan is not a capital plan.
Well, no, you have an equipment fund, and it should be seen in the equipment fund.
So you and I need to have a one-on-one.
Yeah, I know.
And so
Yeah,
I can
we do.
explain this to you, because you're not understanding our plan. But you and I will sit down.
All right.
And where we're at with the plan, Peter. There's a lot, yeah. You and I can have an
It's definitely a misnomer.
very much so.
Yep.
And so there's some steps being taken
Yep.
to change this, so you and I can have a bigger conversation.
Anybody else on future agenda items? No?
I don't have anything.
So I thought we were going to adjourn after executive session?
Oh, oops, wrong order.
Can I take a 5-minute, 2-minute break?
Yeah,
Well,
go
do you
for it.
want to go ahead and go into executive session, and then we can just take the break?
Oh, yeah,
That's the
sure.
next item.
Yeah, executive session.
So I will make a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of a union grievance settlement discussion.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor of going to executive session to discuss a union grievance settlement, please say aye.
Aye.
Hey,
Aye. We're in executive session.
And I should stop the recording or?
Yeah, yes,